Cool. So we are at 5 past the hour. Thank you everyone for showing up today for our Physics and Astronomy Sea Change webinar. I'm really excited to host these two folks from University of California, Irvine, Matthew and Ashley, who will be talking to us about some cool stuff that they've done around graduate students and mental health and pedagogical classes type stuff. And because you're here to hear them and not me, I'll leave it over to them.
Great, thank you. Yeah, so my name is Matt, and then Ashley and I are both postdocs at UC Irvine. And today we'll be talking to you about a paper that we recently published called Beyond Instructional Development, an exploration of using formal pedagogy training to benefit perceived quality of life and sense of community in graduate students. It's a mouthful. So for this webinar, we have three goals for you. The first is to identify how professional development opportunities for graduate students may improve perceptions of mental well-being. The second is to discuss models for pedagogical professional development opportunities. And the third is to summarize our paper, basically, the evidence of teaching-focused professional development opportunities benefiting perceived mental well-being and quality of life. And this research that we had was really motivated by a few key findings. The first was that graduate students are more than 6 times as likely to experience depression and anxiety than the general population. And this has been shown in many different papers. And I'm sure if some of you were or are graduate students, and you can relate to this. The second is that researchers suggest expanding professional development opportunities to address the growing mental health crisis among these graduate students. And they found that, what they were proposing was that this was going to increase retention and also time to completion of degree. And the third is that pedagogy courses in particular, in terms of professional development, can build this multidisciplinary learning community. And the sense of belonging and sense of community aspects are what we focused on in our paper. So our research question is, how do our pedagogy courses impact graduate students' perceived quality of life and sense of community? To address this research question, we focused on 2 of our professional development opportunities. And both of them have to do with pedagogy. The first is a course called the Developing Teaching Excellence course, or what we refer to as 390X. This was a course that I had revamped from our offerings to really focus on not only pedagogy, but also community building, and also the creation of process documents to help graduate students and postdocs. And sometimes we had faculty join as well, but in their professional development. This course is a multidisciplinary course. It lasts just for 1 quarter, so that's just shy of 9 weeks. We capped the course at 25 students. The structure itself is very open. So we have a co-production of knowledge. It's very discussion-based. We do sort of a flipped format. We share food and music, which is a lot of fun. So each of the disciplinary groups will be in charge of sharing food for 1 class session or 2 class sessions. And they'll oftentimes have to describe the food, if they have any connections with the food, that sort of thing. And then we have maybe the first 15 minutes or so of the course or the class dedicated to just sharing food and ideas and music as well. We have a curated playlist by the students, and we get to share some of that. And it's just been a really relaxing atmosphere, very fun. We also have in-class activities that focus on readings. So the way this pedagogical course, as well as the one I'll be talking about next, the way they work is that these graduate students and postdocs will have readings, and then they will have to answer prompts, mostly reflective prompts, but also thinking about actionable steps. And then in class, they go over different activities, different discussion prompts, where they get to know not only each other in their disciplinary groups, but also across disciplines as well. We do things like jigsaws and other debriefing exercises so that they can get to know everybody in the class as a whole. The topics are on the right, so they include the neurobiology of learning and memory. That's my specialty. They include inclusive teaching, collaborative learning, active learning assessment, as well as course design. And in the course itself, the participants will be doing pure observations of teaching, where in a structured format, they will have a pre-observation meeting, where they go over goals of a particular session. And then they go into the observation itself, and then they debrief with their peers. They also create a diversity statement, and they create a blog article where they synthesize primary research as well as their own personal anecdotes. And if you want to check it out, it's called the Flip blog, and it's got a lot of really great information. The next pedagogy related course that I want to talk about is the Pedagogical Fellows Program. There are a lot of similarities between the PF program and 390X, so I'll just highlight some of the differences here that Ashley will be going into in a bit. The first is that instead of a 1 quarter long course, this is a 1 year long cohort that consists of 3 courses as well as a TA training. We cap our PF program at about 30 students. This is competitive. So for 390X, they can just sign up for it through our course registrar. But for this one, they actually have to apply for it. They submit letters. They have to go through a formal interview process. And then they get selected from there to participate in our PF program. The structure is very similar. The topics are very similar, but they do go more in depth. And especially with the inclusive teaching kind of umbrella of topics, they go into trauma-informed pedagogy, mindfulness, as well as critical pedagogy. And what I believe are the main things that differentiates the PF program with 390X are the last 3 bullets here. So the first is they have TA training, or they create a TA training program. The PFs are in charge of training almost every single graduate student that comes through UC Irvine who will have a TA role. And it takes them the better part of a year to create this program and facilitate. It's one of their biggest responsibilities. They also have a lot of job preparation, so they can go not only with process documents like CVs, resumes, that sort of thing, but in terms of how do you look for opportunities, what are some of the more non-traditional opportunities out there, those sorts of things. And then the last is that they will serve on the selection committee for the next round of pedagogical fellows. So oftentimes when we think about professional development, job opportunities, we think about kind of what is it like from the person applying. But with the PF program, they really get to sit on a committee that's similar to a hiring committee, and we do model that process off of the academic hiring committee. So they get chances to sit on both sides of the table, which is a really unique experience for them. But again, throughout this whole year, they're building this cohort, they're building that community, they're building that sense of belonging, which is what Ashley will be talking about next.
Thank you, Matt. So I'm just going to give an overview of our methods for this project. So we really tried to evaluate perceived quality of life benefits from our program through open-ended survey questions. So for example, how has participating in 390X course or Pedagogical Fellows program affected your quality of life? And we had 3 cohorts of 390X class participants, so about 48 390X students, and then 2 cohorts of Pedagogical Fellows, so about 52 students there. And then we analyzed these open-ended questions through content analysis. So basically we did open coding of the data to try to identify some key themes that were coming up in the data. And so for this next portion here, I'm going to present some of the themes or the key findings that we found in our qualitative data across cohorts. This includes 390X and PFs. And then I will present some findings that were specific to PF students. So one of the major themes that we found in the open-ended questions were really that these courses help to promote inclusivity. So really providing a welcoming space where students were able to, learn from other perspectives, get to know people from different disciplines. And in addition to being exposed to different perspectives, which students found refreshing, they also felt like it was a safe space where they could really share how passionate they are about teaching. And so some of them felt like, they might have judgment from others in their departments, But in these courses, they're really able to just really talk about teaching and share that with each other. Similarly, a really key theme that came across was how these programs and the 390X course really helped to establish a sense of community. So in the responses, we saw a lot of the students really describe their peers as encouraging, supportive, relatable, like-minded, and really felt like this was a group of peers that they could turn to for help with their teaching. So just an example, some quotes we pulled here. So everyone in this class is looking for ways to help each other. It's nice to be surrounded by a supportive community. So there was just a lot of discussion about how this group of peers in particular really supported them in their teaching and their professional development. Another really interesting finding was that by participating in these classes, the students started to perceive the university more positively. And this was really because they appreciated that the university offered 390X and the Pedagogical Fellows program and offered support for teaching. So, you know, it could be a reminder of why they're even going to grad school, why they decided to go to UCI. Some students even talked about how they're thinking about transferring to other schools, and then, you know, participating in these programs really helped them to appreciate UCI more. And so they would also talk about feeling a little more connected to the university as well, so perceiving it differently in that way. So for example, because they were in these groups with lots of peers from all across campus, you know, walking around campus, they might actually see somebody from their class, you know, from biology, if they're in English, so they kind of felt more connected to the university as well. But then also, in addition to viewing the university more positively, the students really discussed how they started to change their perspectives in terms of really pursuing a career in teaching. So they felt that by participating in these classes, it really kind of reinforced or legitimized that having a teaching focused career was something possible for them. Another really important and interesting theme that we found was how participating in 390X and then also the Pedagogical Fellows program really seemed to bolster confidence across a lot of different dimensions. So students talked about feeling more confident in their abilities to mentor, to teach, to design a class, to design a course, but then also to speak in front of a class and to enter the job market. And then also there was just kind of overall confidence that students mentioned feeling as though it had been strengthened as well. So for example, here in this quote, I'm less stressed and anxious about teaching, improving my confidence in my ability to teach and providing me with a wide range of strategies and feedback has been the most valuable part of this course. So another theme that came across in the textual data were really how these courses help to promote positive emotional well-being. So students frequently mentioned feeling relaxed, happy, less anxious, as it was something that they looked forward to. So they would, you know, describe the environment as low stress, enjoyable, and that they really enjoyed all the social interactions that they had in the class. So it seemed to overall be an enjoyable, like low stress opportunity that made them feel happy. Another key theme that came across here was really how these courses help to provide a break from research. So a lot of students that are in 390X or in the Pedagogical Fellows program, many of them are working on their dissertations, or at least they're really actively engaged in research in their programs. And so they felt that these courses help to provide a break from that. Many of them described, you know, having the opportunity to excel somewhere else, especially if they're feeling stuck in research. But then also how not only was a break from, you know, having to just get engaged in research, but helped them connect with other people during the dissertation phase, which might be kind of isolating. Sorry, there's a motorcycle outside that's very loud. I hope you can hear it. So those were the findings really across the cohorts. But now I'm going to talk about some of the findings that were specific to pedagogical fellows. So really one of the main differences that stood out for the pedagogical fellows was how participating in this program really offered stability that was really helpful for them. So they met for 3 quarters, but then also over the summer. And while they would meet during the quarters, they would meet the same day at the same time. So it really provided a structured and reliable course, but also form of support and community network. And many of the pedagogical fellows in particular described how the class really helped give them that support and stability that they needed. Again, many of them were working on their dissertations, feeling kind of isolated, but that also these friendships, these relationships that they built in the course were really helpful for them when they were going through personal difficulties and challenges. So just as an example, as a quote here, "It's been wonderful to have this space in my schedule over the past year, even as other aspects of my academic life have been somewhat stressful." Another quote, "Going to PF classes each week has honestly been the highlight of my week and some of the most difficult times of my life." So one thing that was different about this program that was a year long was that they really seemed to develop really close friendships that they'd like to hope would endure after the program. So we really found that our pedagogy courses seem to, having this structure where they're really sharing with each other, co-producing knowledge, sharing their different perspectives from being in different departments, and then also having this personal and professional support, these in-class discussion activities. They seem to be really helpful for graduate students in helping to provide a welcoming and supportive space where graduate students from all across the university, but who all had a passion or interest in teaching, were able to interact and support each other. And so this helped to provide an opportunity where they could make friends and find social support. And sometimes, importantly, these friendships and these forms of social support were situations or circumstances that they weren't finding necessarily in their own department. So it's really important that they were able to be in this other context where they're able to interact with other peers outside of their department and their cohorts. And then also really importantly, if we're thinking about, attrition, making sure normative time to degree, and also just enjoying being at a certain institution, it was really interesting to us that these students did seem to have a more positive outlook of the university itself, but then also of graduate school. So particularly when they were struggling and thinking about, there were even some quotes like, "I kind of remembered why I came to graduate school to begin with." And for some students who felt as though they maybe no longer wanted to pursue, a research-focused position, having this opportunity where they could develop their teaching skills and then also have a teaching-focused career legitimized was really important for them in helping them to give them, the inspiration basically to continue on with their PhD programs. And so also really importantly for mental well-being was this idea of how these programs help to build greater confidence. So, and across many different dimensions. So like I mentioned, teaching, mentorship, communication skills, but then also importantly, giving them much greater confidence in entering the academic job market as well. So this was just a preliminary, our study really does provide some preliminary support for these ideas that mental health and well-being should be kind of thought about comprehensively under these larger career development initiatives, and how pedagogy courses in particular might be effective at helping to address graduate student and mental health. And so before we open it up for questions, we also just want to acknowledge the other two researchers involved on this project. So Dr. Daniel Mann and Dr. Brian Sato with the Division of Teaching Excellence and Innovation at UCI. And thank you very much.
Yes, thanks for your talk. It was really cool. If you have questions, can you please for the attendees, please put them in the chat. So I do have a question because I know you mentioned the academic job market thing. Are there ways that this program prepares folks to go into the non-academic job market, like the nebulous industry that could be anything and everything that's not academic?
Yeah, in this program, we focus on both tracks of the job market, actually those tracks, then some more non-traditional ones. While we do focus on these process documents, which can be offered or which can be asked for by multiple different tracks, we do, for example, have some people come by and talk from different positions. I'll just kind of talk to you a little bit about my own track, because I'm not going in academics and I'm not going into industry, but instead I'm going to be continuing at the DTI as a STEM specialist. It's kind of a new staff position that's not academic or industry. And so we really try to show the students that it's not just, oh, you can be a professor or you can go into industry or whatever, but there are really other things, like, for example, consultations and other like, I don't want to use the term academic because it's not, but you would essentially be working at an academic institution without being an academic, so like staff positions and that sort of thing. And we do have people come by and talk with the PFs as well as the 3NE experts about that. And we do offer networking opportunities for them to get to know more about these more non-traditional paths as well. I don't know, Ashley, if you have anything else to add.
Yeah, so in the Pedagogical Fellows program, there's one quarter that really is devoted to preparing for the academic job market. And the reason that it's kind of focused towards that is usually people that want to be a pedagogical fellow. They're really interested in teaching community college or interested in a research institution, but then they also still really passionate about teaching as well. So we help them, with diversity statements, their CV, cover letters, teaching statements, all of those documents. But occasionally we do have some pedagogical fellows who, they were really interested in teaching, and then suddenly they're like, okay, maybe I don't actually want to go on this career path, and they're more interested in pursuing industry. And so what we've done in those circumstances, because this co-learning and this peer support is such an important part of it, we'll often pair those students up so that they can help each other in reviewing their documents, and then also point them to other resources that are a little less academic. But one of Matt was talking about our TA training program earlier, and we think that this program, where basically the pedagogical fellows have to create workshops, a series of trainings to train the incoming doctoral students in being teaching assistants, those practices, setting up a workshop, having outcomes for it, having all your materials, giving presentations, we feel like those skills that they learn during that process of delivering the TA training would be helpful in a variety of different contexts too. So I think that that's why a lot of the students still feel like their confidence is really bolstered in a lot of ways, because they could be prepared, to give presentations in a more industry setting through that training, but then they're also prepared to give a lecture in an academic setting as well.
And one thing that I'll just add real quick to that is that in that course that Ashley was mentioning that focuses on the academic job market, there's a portion in there where they will look up a job that they can see themselves applying for, and then work on those process documents for there. So there is an element of a customizable experience in that, so that if they do find something that's, let's say, not academic, then it's not like that's the only track. They can really make sure that the experience that they're getting out of this course and out of this program is something that they can use whatever field they decide to go to or whatever career they decide to pursue after they finish.
Yeah, I really like that because I've learned recently that so many of our skills that we thought were not transferable to to non-academic jobs are quite transferable. It's just you have to know that stuff. So we have some questions in the chat. The first question is, what is the racial and ethnic demographics of your pedagogic fellows, and do these facets of the fellows' identities impact how you interpret fellows' experiences of the space as inclusive or safe?
Do you want to take this one, Ashley? Or?
Well, you might know more about the demographics, but I can talk about how the data were.
Yeah, so I'll just go over the demographics real quick, and then you can talk about the data. The demographics are really all over the place. We've got such a diverse group of people who are applying for the Pedagogical Fellows Program. And not only when I talk about diversity, it's not only like racial and ethnic diversity, but also diversity in discipline, diversity in financial situation, diversity in backgrounds. All that has come to enrich the environment that our PFs have when they're with each other. And some of that did come through in some of the quotes that we have for the qualitative analysis as well.
Yeah, so in the qualitative analysis, we were looking just for larger themes. And as Matt mentioned, at UCI, we're really lucky that our student body is really diverse and our cohorts have been really diverse as well, and across multiple different dimensions. Like we have people that are older with children, so like age, race, ethnicity, gender, sexual orientation, a lot of really diverse students. And so we were really interested in how most of the responses that we had that were coded under like inclusivity or creating a welcoming space, they all just seemed really positive and really seemed to be talking more about how they felt like it was an inclusive space because everyone there seemed to really be interested in supporting students, undergraduate students at the university, and really supporting each other in their endeavors. I think there was one comment out of all of those, all of the open-ended questions that we reviewed, where one student felt like there was an issue with like microaggressions. So of course, like there some to at least one person, their experience was that they said as much as they really liked learning from other perspectives and they still kind of framed it as overall really positive, they did kind of mention that one experience. So this is something that we're interested in kind of looking into as like we kind of continue this research, is really thinking about kind of diving more deeply into why these students really seem to think that this is such an inclusive, welcoming space, if it's the facilitator or the structure. But we really think that having all of those students have a shared value of really supporting undergraduate students kind of seems to add to that sense of inclusivity.
And one other thing that I'll add is that some of the comments that we read were talking about inclusivity in terms of their research experience, their home department versus what they experienced with 390X as well as the PF program. And a lot of those people who did mention the sort of dichotomy between the two did mention that they feel like the 390X/PF environments are a lot more inclusive, a lot safer than their home disciplines. So that was something that that we saw in a few comments. And so we were really excited to learn that we're creating this safe environment for them to not only express themselves in terms of what are they interested in a career path, because oftentimes we have people who say, oh, well, I'm so focused on research and my cohort's focused on research and my PI wants me to focus on research, that they can really be themselves in this space. not only were we really excited about that, but we were also really excited to see that that space that we have created that was inclusive in that dimension was also, as Ashley was mentioning, inclusive in a lot of other dimensions as well.
Great, thanks. And the next question would be, to what extent are fellows exposed to possible careers within community college contexts?
Yeah, and they are very much exposed to the community college context. And one of the main reasons for that is because throughout this, I like to refer to it as almost like a conveyor belt sort of system, this pipeline of through NEX to PF and then to be an alum of these programs. We do have quite a few people who go the community college routes. And so because of that, when we talk about the community college system, we have a lot of experience, a lot of collective experience from past PFs and 3NEXers who can talk to the current cohort about that. And what's really great about that is that the alum can really talk about how their experiences in 390X and PF have prepared them for the community college career. And we have had times where those alum have come back and have actually spoken with the current cohort in either a small group setting, one-on-one sort of thing, or just in any number of networking opportunities to talk about that. What's really, I think, unique about this particular setup that we have with our programs is that it synergizes with a lot of other programs that we find on campus that are also focused on non-academic, I guess not non-academic, non-research focused career paths. And so, for example, we have something called the California Community Colleges Internship Program or the Summer Teaching Academy or Summer Teaching Apprenticeship Program. Both of those are more focused with community college teaching or even just lecturing in general. And so we really have this network at UCI where we've been able to plug in our PFs and our 3NEXers who do go off and have careers in the community college come back into many different programs within the university to really form that network.
Yeah, and I just want to add, because it's a really important point that Matt brought up, but just how the community of pedagogical fellows and 390Xers really goes beyond just while they're in the classroom, but our alums, you know, if they hear about opportunities, a new position opening up at their institution, they'll often let us know so that we can let the fellows know. And so it really helps them too with like this mentorship. So when you know, if a pedagogical fellow, for example, gets a job, you know, starting at teaching at a community college, we can often put them in touch with somebody who's been teaching at a similar institution or maybe even that institution, and then they can meet. And so then there's this like kind of built-in mentorship as well. So yeah, it's just a really lovely community.
Great. And I was wondering, is because it sounds like you get a lot of sort of like informal understanding of what the students are going through and that what might be happening at their home departments and whatnot. Do you have opportunities or would it be problematic somehow if, you know, you won't be like, and this student had this issue with things, but just some general things is better improve the departments?
We have to walk a very fine line there. And the stance that we've taken is that we are there to provide an alternate space for the students, but we don't go into the different departments and talk to them about their experiences because we know that some departments are, let's say, harder to work with than others, and some have a very specific reason or set of reasons for why they conduct themselves the same way. And we don't, you know, we're not pretending to know the departmental dynamics. And of course, there are students who don't go through our program and who stay in those departments who also are very successful. So for us, we really just want to provide that space for an alternative for those people. And we don't necessarily go in and try to deal with whatever's going on over there. We don't want to touch that.
Yeah, that being said, I think as a whole, UCI is, you know, being a bit more thoughtful about thinking about the experience for for graduate students, and you know, having these climate committees and taking surveys to see, you know, how people feel in their departments. So even if like we are not directly involved in that, I do think that the university as a whole is trying to think more about um, graduate student mental health and well-being, but then also the climate of these different departments and who's being supported and how, and thinking about how we can improve the quality of life, but also the quality of education, the quality of experience while they're here at UCI.
And one other thing that I'd like to add real quick is that our pedagogical fellows and 390Xers do serve as DTI ambassadors when they go back to their home departments. And oftentimes they will talk to the people there about their experiences in our pedagogy courses. And we've actually had it where some people go back to their home departments and they've created entire pedagogy programs within their own departments that is modeled off of our PF and 390X courses to make it more discipline specific, to make it more departmental so that they can create a departmental cohort. And we've had them talk with, for example, teaching professors there. And there are a couple of examples of like earth system science and some of the other in humanities and social ecology where these professors have actually created courses that are modeled off of our 390X course and PF program to create that, because they do see this need in their home departments to offer something similar. And it's really great because instead of competing with us for those students, they work with us so that we can synergize our different programs and serve as resources for each other. And it's really neat to see that this network and this web of opportunity is being spread throughout campus.
And then I just want to add one more point about kind of like the ambassadors of pedagogical fellows. And one way that I do think that we do try to help improve situations at the department level, at least implicitly, is that you know, I think a great source of stress for a lot of graduate students is, you know, TAing for a course, or maybe they don't feel totally comfortable, or they might not have the skills and the tools that they need, or have maybe they haven't developed how to facilitate discussion sections, so they feel kind of anxious and nervous about you know, going in and leading these sessions, particularly in a field where maybe they don't feel that they really have a strong expertise in. And so often the pedagogical fellows are kind of known in the department, and then these graduate students can reach out to them and then ask them, like, can you sit down with me and talk with me about you know, some strategies that I can maybe use in my class, or, oh, I know that you also TA'd for this course before, would you be willing to share your materials and resources? And really one thing about the pedagogical fellows program and also 390X that we really like to instill is, which I think makes it different than interacting with peers in your own department in some capacity, is just how much people are willing to share resources and materials and time to really help to support other graduate students, improve the learning experiences for undergraduate students, but then also improve their own teaching skills. So that's just another aspect of our program that I think is really helpful.
Cool. Great. So if anybody else has any other questions, I will have a final question. Where do you feel this program might further develop in the future? Or do you feel like you're in a good spot and you can go steady state with things?
So there are many ways to push this program and this pipeline forward. But at the same time, we are pretty comfortable with where we're at, and there's a lot that we can do here to improve. I'll just give a couple of examples where we've already been extending this a little bit more. And this is actually at the request of a lot of the 390Xers and the PFs, who, especially the PFs, they say, well, we're here for a year, and then what's next? Like, what do we do? We want to continue the training. We want to continue our community. Like, how do we do this? And there are a few examples that we've come up with. The first is we have this other program called the Pedagogical Liaisons program, where they can sign up well, they can apply, they can create contracts within their home departments to do things like help a faculty member revamp their courses using best pedagogical practice and evidence-based teaching, or they can do additional observations either with faculty, with grad students, or postdocs to provide additional feedback. We have a somewhat unofficial senior pedagogical fellows where they can come back and run additional workshops with us. And we give them the topics, and then they really have almost free reign to create the workshop however they want. As we mentioned before, our PFs sometimes go back to their home departments and create additional programs. There are a lot of different ways that these PFs and 3NEXers can stay in the network and also to expand the network. But one of the things that we're looking to do is to expand this sort of training to other institutions as well, to share our material with them, to consult with them and give them an idea of how they can create the same sort of support network for the graduate students as well, because this isn't an isolated incident where it's just UCI grad students who are feeling this way, right? This is something that is nationwide or even international, that the graduate students feel like they need to have these sorts of professional development opportunities. So just kind of thinking about long-term, that's one of the things that we're thinking about. And actually we're working right now with a group up at UC Berkeley. This has been a project going on for the last I want to say 4 years now, about how to create this web of opportunities for people for graduate students who aren't at institutions that have this sort of support, so that they can get that training regardless. And so that's something that's kind of been working in the background for the past few years.
I'll just add to that one. So we are kind of, we have limited capacity as a smaller staff, but one thing that we would love to do is to follow up more regularly with our previous pedagogical fellows and 390X participants, and really see, follow up with them and really learn about how our programs were helpful for them, and when they did end up, first of all, what career did they end up with, and then how did they feel like these programs helped to support them in being successful in their career, and then also ask them, reflecting back, would there have been something else that maybe would have been helpful to you that we could have included in our programming. So really thinking about, like, while we do think that we have a really strong system right now, just learning a little bit more about how we could even better support our graduate students that participate, but then also think about, I think, helping to demonstrate how successful this program is. I'm assuming, hopefully, but like following up with participants and really learning from them how this program really helps them to be successful at whatever institution or whatever career that they end up in.
One more thing that I'd like to just add, Ashley just reminded me of this, is that both of us, both me and Ashley, were products of the PF program. We both went through it ourselves. And it has morphed over the years to be something that I mean, it was already good from the start, but it's really been just sky's the limit for how the program is going. But because of the success that we've had, especially with the additional programming like the senior PF program, and where they help us create additional workshops, we've actually created, both of our postdocs actually have come from these experiences. Where, because we just loved it so much, we were able to continue with DTEI as postdocs. And before us, there wasn't an opportunity to do that. So to offer these things where people can further develop their pedagogy, further develop maybe their interest in different careers, has been something that is just so great to see that the division, as well as the vice provost, has been willing to support in terms of professional development.
Great. I think that is it for questions. I'll stay on for a few extra minutes. Thank you so much for our speakers. Thank you so much for the audience. I think this was a great conversation. And I'm hoping that you all will share this later on when this is uploaded to YouTube.